All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. So as usual, we'll start with some announcements. We'll do our recommended reading, followed by the affirmation of the day. Come back and do some introductions and victories. That's an opportunity for anybody who's new to introduce themselves. Or if you'd like to share a victory or celebration from the past week, you can do that then. We will listen to an audiobook excerpt from my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. We're finishing up chapter 7 this week and next. We'll come back, work on our topic discussion, take a break, and then come back and talk about the assignment for tonight and do some Q&A and wrap it up by 9 o'clock. A reminder that tonight's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Please feel free to mute your microphone and or stop your video if you don't wish to be seen or heard on the recording. Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, first edition paperbacks, only a few copies left. This is probably your last, this week and maybe next week, your last opportunities to get a copy of the first edition. I'm just about to send in the second edition to get a proof done on that. But you can save 20% by using the discount code workshop20 at checkout at bebiggertoday.com/book. And while you're on my website, please check out my New York City photo book, New York Cityscapes, a collaboration between myself and 6 other New York City area photographers. This is the best of the New York City skyline, landmarks, from the point of view of 7 different photographers. So check it out. A lot of great photos in here from a lot of talented people. You can get it for $16.95. It's still on sale on my website, bebiggertoday.com/bookstore. And you can check it out there. And while you're there, you could check out some merch, hats and t-shirts. Use the discount code MERCH20 at checkout to save 20% at bebiggertoday.com/merch. You can also check out my original art and photography, my landscape, cityscape, and abstract images. They are professionally framed, gallery-wrapped canvas prints. And you can see them at bebiggertoday.com/art-photography. And here is a little commercial for you guys. Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery-wrapped canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. And carrying on here, continuing. We also have refrigerator magnets. These are my original NYC photos on refrigerator magnets. Check them out at bebiggertoday.com/merch. My most recent podcast, it's still What's the Difference podcast, the US-UK network. Had a great conversation with Tom and David on overcoming our limiting thoughts and beliefs about ourselves and setting ourselves up for success in life and realizing the life that we want. So check it out. If you go to my website, bebiggertoday.com, look on the homepage, you'll see this photo, click on that, and it will take you directly to that YouTube video of the podcast. I am available for one-on-one coaching and or corporate consulting. So if you're a creative person, an artist, a photographer, a writer, or if you have a business or work for a business and would like me to come in and speak to your sales team or your management team on how they can be bigger than they think they are, reach out to me through the website at bebiggertoday.com and we'll set that up. And finally, I'm accepting donations. I'm looking for support to continue to offer this workshop at no charge and keep it open to everyone. We have a suggested donation of $5 per week or $20 per month. You can send your contributions directly to me at paypal.me/Peter Alessandria. Thank you guys so much for your support. All right, so tonight's recommended reading. Speaking of money, the recommended reading for tonight is The Richest Man in Babylon. Now, this book was published in 1926. It was written by George Samuel Clausen. And I think this is the only book that George ever wrote. Now, I actually came across this book this past week, and I highly recommend it, actually. It's a wonderful book. I'll read you the publisher's blurb in a moment. It is available online. I actually found an audiobook version on YouTube that you can listen to. There are paperbacks available on Amazon and all of that. Now, the publisher's blurb for this book, based on the Babylonian parables, has been hailed as one of the greatest of all inspirational works on the subjects of thrift, financial planning, and personal wealth. In simple language, these fascinating and informative stories set you on a sure path towards prosperity and its accompanying joys. A celebrated bestseller, it offers a deeper understanding of the potential solutions to our financial problems. It reveals the secrets to acquiring money, keeping money, and making our money earn more money. And as I said, this book was originally published in 1926. And I like this quote from George. It's where the determination is, the way can be found. So what I really like about this book is I just kind of stumbled upon it this week on YouTube. And I think this, first of all, it's fictional. It's not an actual biography or anything like that about the richest person, the richest man in Babylon. But he uses parables and stories, and he takes us back to ancient Babylon. And ancient Babylon was one of the most prosperous, successful cities in the world during its time, like 2,000 years before Christ, 2000 BC. The Hanging Gardens and the architecture and the art, the technology, they irrigated, it was basically the desert. Babylon is located by current day Baghdad in Iraq. So that's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And they irrigated that and they created this beautiful city, all kinds of commerce. It was kind of the center of the trade routes between Asia and the West. And so what George did, he took these fictional characters and he created these stories all about prosperity, all about managing money, acquiring wealth. And more than anything else, what I really like about this is he talks about the mindset of having our money work for us instead of us work for our money. The mindset of, the money that I earn, I have to keep a portion of that for myself. Very simple things. In fact, I think this book would be great for mandatory reading, like in high school for kids, because it talks about the basics of money, the basics of how money works, the basics of, as I said, acquiring wealth, building wealth, talks about compound interest, things like that, in a very compelling set of parables and stories. So check it out. I really like this book. I'm going to listen to it again, actually. And, maybe you're really good with your money. Maybe you're not so good with your money. Maybe you're somewhere in between. But I really see this as a wonderful kind of primer in a very non-confrontative or in your face kind of way how to manage our money, how to increase our wealth and all of that. So The Richest Man in Babylon, written by George Samuel Clausen. And where there is determination, the way can be found. And he talks a lot about, in ancient Babylon, they had slaves. They used slaves. And, there's no commentary on the ethics of that or whatever. Obviously, we've progressed far beyond that. But what he was talking about was the mentality of the slave versus the mentality of a free person. And he uses the analogy of the slave for how many of us become, through our mentality, through our thought processes, we become slaves to money, we become slaves to work, and we're missing out on true prosperity as a result. So this is really about reprogramming our thinking around money in a very, I don't want to say lighthearted, but a very approachable, compelling, and entertaining way. So again, The Richest Man in Babylon, available wherever you get books, so check it out. Now, our affirmation of the day is actually not really an affirmation. Once again, it's more of a saying. This is actually a quote from Albert Einstein, and I love this photo of him. He says, "I am happy because I want nothing from anyone. I don't care about money. Decorations, titles, or distinctions mean nothing to me. I do not crave praise. I claim credit for nothing." And he says, "A happy man is too satisfied with the present to dwell too much on the future." Now, I actually came across a whole bunch of Einstein's quotes recently, and it turns out he was a very spiritual person. He had a deep belief in a higher power, in spirituality. You can find those quotes online, but it was really interesting. I mean, he's a theoretical physicist. He's known for a couple of the most profound theories in physics, the theory of general relativity and special relativity, amongst other things. But he also had this very strong spiritual, metaphysical take on things. And I love his attitude about life. You know, I am happy because I want nothing from anyone. I don't care about money. I don't crave praise. So, you know, in chapter 3, we talked about happiness, true happiness. And I said that true happiness is different from things like satisfaction, relief, fun with family or friends, or physical pleasure. True happiness comes from within us. And I noted that for me, I spent a lot of my life, especially when I was younger, looking for praise, looking for recognition, looking for somebody to tell me that I was okay so I could feel good about myself, because I thought if I felt good about myself, then I could be happy. I would finally be happy. Now, there were two problems with that. The first was the obvious problem of looking outside myself for praise, recognition, for somebody to tell me I was okay. As we've talked about from day one in these workshops, and it's all over my book, I get to decide who I am. I get to decide how I feel about myself. And I get to choose whether or not I'm worthy, worthwhile, a good person, whether I'm lovable, and so on. And then the second part of that is, again, looking outside myself to find happiness, to find joy. True happiness is found within. Now, we've heard that since the beginning of recorded history, you know, the Bible, all kinds of religious texts and all of that. But I know for me, I can still look outside myself. If I just get that new camera, or the new girlfriend, or the new whatever, the new car, somehow that will bring me happiness. That will bring me joy. It can bring good feelings, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But true happiness is something that comes from within us. And I said several times, I believe love, I believe happiness, I believe forgiveness are choices, they're decisions. Happiness is not a feeling. Happiness is a decision. It's a choice that we make. And the only way to make that choice is to think thoughts, feel feelings, speak words, and take actions consistent with happiness. So I kind of related to what he's saying here. I think Einstein was enlightened enough to know that the world was not going to bring him joy, was not going to bring him pleasure, that he was responsible for creating those things in himself. And he wasn't looking for other people to affirm him or tell him that he was okay. And like I said, I love this photo. I think he had a pretty playful side. I would have loved to have to meet Albert Einstein, to have met him. So I am happy because I want nothing from anyone. I don't care about money. Decorations, titles, or distinctions mean nothing to me. I don't crave praise. I claim credit for nothing, although he did routinely credit God, his source, a higher power for a lot of his achievements. And he says, a happy man is too satisfied with the present to worry about the future. So that's some wisdom for your Wednesday night from Albert Einstein. All right, so this is the portion of the workshop where we do introductions and victories. It's an opportunity for anybody who's new to introduce themselves, say hello, or if you have a celebration or victory from the past week, this is an opportunity for you to share that as well. So who would like to say hello or share a celebration or victory? Barbara.
Yes, it's usually one of us. Hi, how are you?
Good. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. And it was one of the best, I would have to say, but, I'm sure all of them were wonderful. But, because I spoke about it at this workshop last week, I am talking, getting on with it. But it was, what would be the word, Peter? I know a lot of people say interesting. It was, remember, I had a lot of anxiety about it. It was such an accumulation of what's going on in my life, right? I keep on bringing everything, and you're talking about forgiveness now, and we're talking about how to forgive people. Well, I'm noticing that most of my problems and things that are going on right now all have to do with me and not somebody else. And I think that happened last week, that I kind of really understood that. And I think you knew that I understood that. So that's why, I didn't even know. Here I was going to cancel because I felt I just felt I couldn't do it. And if you understand, I couldn't do it because I was too. What are all the things when you're mad at somebody or you're harping on something? I was doing it to myself. I have been doing it to myself. So, okay, moving forward, my sister's going to take me on a wonderful vacation. Right. We went to Block Island. It was wonderful. It was the best vacation. I keep on saying it was the best time I've had in such a long time. Why? Well, I don't know how to say this. I think because she was there for me. She didn't have, and I know she told me that, she didn't have other expectations. So many times we do get into things and this is part of what she wanted to do. And it's very hard to be with people sometimes because they want to do their thing. They have to do their thing. And then I was just happy. It became a very happy time. You don't know how many times we said happy. We walked around, we drank, we ate, we laughed, we took pictures. We were so extremely happy for 2 days. It's almost going to make me cry because I didn't know, I haven't had that in so long. I can't even explain it. So it's a woohoo moment. It's a wonderful thing. I think it changed things. I think it changed me in a sense of where my progress was going throughout this whole workshop and everything like that. And all the things you talk about and all the principles are true because you still have to deal with the real life. You still have to deal with all those people you might have problems with. Somehow I know you've been saying it's me, but I don't know, and it's great. It's at the end of the workshop. So it's almost like did we do this on purpose? So I will be it's like losing 200 pounds or something like that. And I'm the winner. It all has to do with me and the way I feel about myself. But I also do feel, and I don't know how this came about, and I know you're going to explain it. I had somebody there for me, not for themselves. And that was a big thing. That's a big thing to recognize, to understand it, and especially if you've been without it, and it felt really good. You can't have it all the time, but what a blessing or what a wonderful thing that your sister will come to you and give you whatever she can. And that's a big thing. People don't give, Peter. People don't like to put themselves out for people. They really don't. And so I think we're all walking around lacking that. It's a wonderful thing when somebody gives you something. it's that give and take. You got to always give back. But wow. So that's what I experienced. There you go.
Well, I have to start with,
I
woohoo!
know. I know.
That's great. I'm
Yeah.
really happy for you. I had a feeling it was going to work out really well. I know your sister. She's a lovely, wonderful woman, and all that. And I'm glad that you guys had that experience. And I would suggest, just think about it, that not only was somebody else there for you, but perhaps for the first time in a real way, you were there for you.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. To say that you don't even know how to do that, or it progressed to that point, it's amazing. Yeah. So, going through, and we'll talk about it. Enough with that. I did. It was wonderful. I wish I was still there. She has a plan for me to go back next year. And I always said that, and work there. We're working on, because I know the woman that owns so many properties there and everything. And she says, you're going back here next year and you're going to spend the summer here. And I'm like, okay, so it's a goal. And, but what was I going to say? But enough of that. But, reading all this stuff that you want to talk about with forgiveness, I guess I need to forgive myself. I need to put my name in all the things that you were talking about, like when you want to say to a person's name, it's going to be my name. I have to forgive myself.
Ultimately, that's a great lead into tonight. Ultimately, all true forgiveness is self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
And until we, and we will incorporate that as we go, because it is really, we tend to be, first of all, other people tend to be much more forgiving of us than we are of ourselves. And we tend to forgive others more easily than we forgive ourselves, and, that's why I talk about, a big change in my life, and it's ongoing, and I don't do it perfectly, but has been this move from being my own worst enemy to my own best friend, and just to not beat myself up so much when I make a mistake, or when I do something imperfectly, or when I don't live up to my expectations for myself. I was so hard on myself for so long. And people used to say to me all the time, you're so hard on yourself. And I would say, well, of course, how else am I going to be better?
Right.
But, hating ourselves never made anybody a better person.
Yeah.
We're talking about awareness. We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about encouraging ourselves in a positive, loving way, not beating ourselves up.
So my experience was knowing all that, and I've been working on that and having that going into this, vacation or whatever you want to call it. And then what a joy, or what a wonderful experience that somebody was there to give you what that love and all that stuff. It was just it's like the perfect storm, or a perfect combination. It was a perfect combination. It was wonderful. And again, it's not going to happen all the time. But that's the thing. I'm trying to talk about it as two things going on. Yourself, you're working on yourself. And what about, it's a relationship, isn't it? In a sense that you do need things from the outside too, from people. We all think we can do it ourselves, and we're going to make ourselves happy, and I can do this, and I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to be bigger, and I'm going to be this. Yes. And what about then, it's usually family, when your family comes and really celebrates you. It's a great feeling.
It's awesome. I mean, it's beautiful. I love it. I'm really, really happy for you guys and for you. And I will also say that, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say, maybe you were more willing to receive the love.
Yeah.
Because another thing we do when we hold grievances, when we don't forgive people and we hold grievances, even if it's kind of subconscious, we don't let them love us. We don't let them do nice things for us. Or if they do something nice, instead of seeing the positive, we'll look for what they did wrong or what they didn't do.
Right. It's terrible. That's a terrible way to live.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's true for you, but I see this in myself and I see this in other people. Even when somebody is doing something nice for us, we still don't have to let that in. We can still judge them, make them wrong for what they're not doing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give a specific example, but I saw this with somebody in my own family recently where, completely ignored the positive and focused only on the negative, and then didn't get to really experience the joy of the positive.
Yeah.
And that's what we do when we hold grievances, when we hold resentments, and it becomes part of the pattern of who we think we are, who we think the other person is. Somehow we want to hang on to that negativity. So I'm going to suggest, maybe it's true for you, maybe it's not, but maybe that's part of why you had such a wonderful time this weekend.
Right. I agree. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's wonderful to have people who care about us and people who love us. But, again, I shared this last week. I've had people in my life that have loved me and I still haven't been happy. I still haven't felt good about myself. I still haven't let them, share the joy of my life.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying, Peter. If you can get both things in sync, and that's what I had this weekend, that was a wonderful thing. You have to have the other two. I have to be feeling really good about myself. I have to be really loving myself. I have to be working. I don't know, what's the word? Working on yourself, or what is the word? Am I supposed to just be laissez-faire? I don't know. Letting all the grievances and all that stuff go away. We can do that on a daily basis, especially if you're going to get involved in a family get together. You can work, like you say, you can meditate, get yourself in the right place, get all the grievances out, be a truly wonderful person, and then go into that, environment. And I bet it'd be a totally different experience. It would be a wonderful experience, hopefully for both sides.
Good stuff, Barb.
Okay.
You're going to get a diploma.
I know.
You've worked really hard. And I love the progress that you've made, because you're not the same person.
No, I'm not. And that's what I'm saying. And we're at the end and all this kind of stuff, and it all seemed to come together. My, who would have known? Thank you.
All right, great. We talk more in a little bit.
All right.
Dee, you want to chime in? You want to say hi?
Yeah, sorry, I unmuted prematurely. I just love that last share. Thank you, and congratulations. Peter, when you said somebody didn't mention all the good stuff and just focused on what was wrong, boy, if I could heal from that affliction, somehow I was taught that, seeing, I think it was Sesame Street, like which one of these things doesn't fit, and why. Anyway, I have a really good, what's wrong radar, what's wrong. And I miss acknowledging everything that's right. And I'd love to just flip and be the different person that just acknowledges what's right and just lets what's wrong, be itself. So that's a future diploma that I'm looking forward to receiving. Anyway, glad to be with you. Sorry it's late, got the timing all goofed up. Thanks, Pat.
All right, great. Thanks, Dee. Yeah, I mean, again, for me, I can only speak for myself, but, as I change who I think I am, as I change how I see myself, and as I make forgiveness is a decision. Happiness is a choice. It's a decision. It's like my whole life, I've been waiting for somebody to come along and make me happy. But I started off this book by saying nobody makes us feel anything, good or bad. So it's what I focus on, what I choose to see in myself, what I choose to see in other people. And it's not to say we ignore inappropriate behavior. We don't put ourselves in harm's way. But the only tools that I had in the past was the resentment, the grievances. I didn't know how to take care of myself without that. And so if somebody was being nice to me, but in the past, maybe they weren't so nice, or we had conflict or whatever, I was probably subconsciously afraid of putting myself back in harm's way. So we talked about this in chapter 6 when we talked about judgment. Judgment is, in my opinion, in my experience, and I learned this in 12-step programs, judgment is a character defect, or what I like to call a survival strategy. It's actually a defense mechanism. And I use judgment as a way to keep myself safe. Because if I judge you as unworthy, as not good enough, as less than, then I don't have to get close to you. And if I don't have to get close to you, then I don't risk being hurt by you. So judgment becomes this defense mechanism that we have. And again, it's not that we ignore somebody else's inappropriate behavior. We don't give people a pass on their accountability and all of that. And the more I learn how to take care of myself, the less I need judgment to keep myself safe. If somebody's really acting inappropriate, and I know how to take care of myself, I know how to stand up for myself, I know how to set boundaries, I can stop that in the moment, or at least remove myself from that situation. And it doesn't have to go to resentment. It doesn't have to become a grievance. It doesn't have to become something that I hold against them for the rest of my life. I may not like it. It may not be right, but I don't have to be resentful. I don't have to give my power away to it. I don't have to give my peace of mind. I said this last week, kind of the whole point of forgiveness is we don't give up our peace of mind because of what somebody else is being, doing, or saying. So, and we get to decide. Nobody makes us do anything. Nobody makes me give up my peace of mind. Nobody makes me give up my power. Nobody makes me feel bad about myself or bad about them. All right, great. So we got a lot to cover tonight. So anybody else want to say hi or share a victory? Cynthia?
Yes, I'd like to say hi. And I don't know, my video is stopped, but thank you and congratulations and woohoo to all of the shares. Thanks.
All right, great. All right, thank you, Cynthia. Anybody else? All right, so let us carry on. So the topic, we're continuing forgiveness. This is the last 2 weeks, just so you guys know. So we're going to do this week and next week, finish up chapter 7 next week. And then I think the first week in August 4th, will be our last workshop. I'm thinking I'm going to do a review, the whole book, chapter 1 through 7. Try and fit that into 90 minutes. And then we can do, any final questions or whatever. So that's what I'm thinking. That will probably be, I think it's August 4th. So tonight we're going to talk about the specific forgiveness processes that are in chapter 7. Let's listen to the audiobook excerpt for tonight because I go through all 4 of them. We're not going to have a chance to talk about all 4 of them, but I'm going to highlight one later on. But in the audiobook tonight, it's about 12 minutes. It's going to have all the forgiveness processes that I use. All right, so hang on for 1 minute.
Forgiveness processes. So let's take a look at some of the specific ways we can practice forgiveness. This is obviously not meant to be an exhaustive list. I'm including some methods that have worked for me, but you're encouraged to look for other methods that may resonate with you. Or, as I've done, maybe even make up some of your own. Also, it's not about doing the processes perfectly. The intention to forgive matters much more than the particular words or methods you use. It's very important to keep in mind that forgiveness is something we do by ourselves, for ourselves. The other person's participation is not required and may in fact be counterproductive. This means none of these or any other methods require the involvement or knowledge of the other person. In terms of sharing with someone that you're forgiving them, keep in mind what we said in chapter 6. Everyone thinks they're right. Thus, the other person may not agree with your assessment that what they've done is wrong. It may be presumptive, therefore, to tell somebody you're forgiving them. A possible exception is when they've acknowledged their wrongdoing and have asked to be forgiven. But that happens a lot less often than our ego would have us believe. Accordingly, you're urged to use discretion in announcing that you're letting another person off the hook, especially if they weren't aware they were on the hook in the first place. The first forgiveness process I use is adapted from A Course in Miracles, workbook lesson number 161. I've changed it around a bit, but the gist is the same. The Course suggests that in response to the temptation to be upset by someone else's behavior, say the following: "Give me your blessing, holy child of God, that I may look upon you through the eyes of love, and in you see my own innocence." I've actually created a much longer version of this process, which is included in the appendix. It's the process I use most often when I practice forgiveness. First, notice we're asking them to give us their blessing. This is because if we're upset, we've lost our peace, and so we're in need of a blessing. Losing our peace hurts us and may result in us hurting others. Notice also we're acknowledging them as a holy child of God. It's hard to hate someone when we truly see them this way. A Course in Miracles says, as you see another, you will see yourself. So, for instance, as long as I see others as bad or evil, chances are I'll harbor similar thoughts about myself. It may not be in the exact same way or in the exact same situations, but continuing negative thoughts about others will feed negative thoughts about myself. Here, by seeing the other person the way love would see them, we see their innocence and thus our own. The second forgiveness process is my take on a healing prayer from Hawaii known as the Ho'oponopono. Start by getting quiet for a few minutes. Then pull up an image of the person you want to heal with in your mind. When you're ready, say to yourself, name of person, I am sorry, please forgive me, I forgive you, we are at peace, we are one, I love you, thank you. You can use this prayer many times during the day. Repeat it until you feel any blocks to your forgiveness of that person slip away. It may take numerous attempts to get a full release, depending on how deep the hurt is. You may be wondering why we're apologizing to them and asking their forgiveness when they're the ones who've harmed us. Unless you're a saint, like me, St. Peter, get it? Your initial reaction to being harmed by them was probably judgment, anger, resentment, and so on. By apologizing and asking their forgiveness, within our own hearts and minds, of course, again, we're not actually saying these things out loud to anyone. We're taking responsibility for our negative reactions and showing a level of humility commensurate with true forgiveness. As with all forgiveness processes, the other person shouldn't know we're doing this, except when they experience our new, beneficent attitude towards them. The third method is a prayer I came across recently known as the Buddhist Prayer of Forgiveness. Buddhist Prayer of Forgiveness. If I have harmed anyone in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through my own confusions, I ask their forgiveness. If anyone has harmed me in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through their own confusions, I forgive them. And if there is a situation I am not yet ready to forgive, I forgive myself for that. For all the ways that I harm myself, or negate, doubt, or belittle myself, or that I judge myself or am unkind to myself through my own confusions, I forgive myself. I like this prayer a lot, especially because it suggests we can forgive ourselves for not forgiving. I have to admit there are still some days I'd rather just be angry than forgive. So forgiving myself for not being ready to forgive is actually huge. Equally, and perhaps even more important, is being willing to forgive myself for all the ways I can harm myself. As the prayer implies, every time I'm unkind to myself, I'm harming myself. Finally, notice that if I can forgive myself for not forgiving myself, I'm still doing forgiveness, and that's the whole point. The fourth process is also one I came across recently. It can be found in a book entitled The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. I have modified it for our purposes. Go off by yourself and quiet your mind. Think of divine love and what that means to you. When you're fully relaxed, think of the person you want to forgive. Try to see them in the most positive light possible for you at that moment. When you're ready, say out loud, I fully and freely forgive you, name a person. I release you emotionally, mentally, and physically. I completely forgive everything connected with the matter in question. I am free and you are free. From this day on, we can each move forward with our lives unencumbered by the anger, hurts, pain, and resentments of the past. If you feel moved, you can continue as follows. Today is my day of universal amnesty. I release everybody who has ever harmed me and wish for each of them perfect health, happiness, prosperity, and peace. I grant my adversaries all the blessings of life. I do this freely, joyously, and lovingly. If a memory of past hurt enters your mind, or if you suffer a new harm in the present, wish the offender well by saying, Peace be with you. Let there be perfect harmony and understanding between us. I release you in light and love. I give you all the blessings of life which are mine to give. I am free, you are free, and we are one in the heart and mind of spirit. This process mostly speaks for itself. The important thing to remember is we'll know if we've truly forgiven when we feel nothing but love and compassion for the other person. We're not condoning their harmful behavior, but they no longer have the power to hurt us. We may choose to end the relationship, yet by releasing them with love, we drop the burden of the pain we've been carrying. This is why forgiveness is good for us. By freeing them, we release ourselves from the burden of anger, suffering, and resentment. Photographic memory. As I was finishing the first draft of this chapter, I spontaneously came up with another forgiveness technique that I'd like to share. You'll need a photograph of the person you'd like to forgive as a young child. Obviously, this is easier with family and close friends. But if you're one of those people who holds grievances against certain public figures, like politicians, those photos may be available online. Take the photo into your meditation. Look at the person's image and imagine what they were like as a young child. If you knew them personally, recall any positive feelings you had about them. If you didn't know them personally, see if you can sense the innocence and beauty that all children have. Be with those thoughts and feelings for a little while. Then remind yourself that the little kid in the photo is still present inside the adult who you're now trying to forgive. If you want to take it a step further, see if you can have a dialogue with that child. Ask them stuff you'd normally ask a kid, such as what's their favorite food or color, whether they like school, and so on. Then once the child is comfortable with you, ask him or her what happened that caused the adult to act in the manner that they did. In my particular case, I got that it was a combination of fear and overwhelm that had morphed into the rank unkindness I had recently witnessed. Based on the child's response, I could comprehend why the adult had acted this way. I still didn't agree with them, but at least now I understood why they did it. Continuing to quietly look at the photo, I felt my own feelings of anger dissipate. I had to repeat the process a few times before I got to a place of forgiveness, since I was quite upset about what had happened. Several times during the meditation, my ego came roaring back. As I replayed the incident over in my head, I kept having flashes of all the reasons I was right and they were wrong. It was so interesting to see my ego trying to reassert itself in my thinking. But I persisted, and eventually, instead of being angry, I came to a place in my heart of wanting to help all the people involved in the situation to heal from it. So keep in mind that for any forgiveness process to be effective, repetition may be necessary. Also, be on the lookout for the ego's attempts to recommandeer your thinking. It will take advantage of any opportunity, such as when you're feeling stressed or tired, to reassert itself in your mind. You'll know this because the idea of forgiveness will slip away, being replaced with the notion that retaliation and attack are the only appropriate responses. Reclaiming your inner child. This photo forgiveness process reminds me of another process I used to do when I first got into recovery for codependence many years ago. I found a photo of myself as a young child, either from kindergarten or first grade. I would take the photo into my meditation and place it opposite me on a table. After centering myself with a series of deep breaths, I would look at the photo and concentrate on what it was like to be that little kid. At a certain point, I began to dialogue with him. I asked little Peter some of the questions I mentioned earlier. What's your favorite color? How do you like school? Etc. This process is similar to the inner child work described by John Bradshaw and other authors. Lots of feelings came up as I did this. My feelings for him, his feelings for me, and both our feelings for life in general. For instance, I could see he really didn't trust me. He was like, dude, where have you been? I needed you to protect me, but I could never depend on you. This kind of surprised me. But even more surprising was when I realized I blamed him for many of my emotional issues. We also shared the same reactions to certain situations. For example, we would both get really anxious when there was a lot of yelling and screaming, especially parents yelling at their kids. Even as an adult, I could be out someplace, such as a grocery store, and hearing an adult scold or shame a child would really trigger me. Same for him. Over the course of a few months, I established a new relationship with little Peter, and thus with myself. I acknowledged I could have done more to protect him and promised to try harder in the future. I also stopped blaming him for some of my emotional issues and agreed to check in with him every now and then to see how he was feeling. Eventually, I felt I had arrived at a place of peace with this part of myself. It was actually a pretty awesome feeling, and I highly recommend this process or other similar inner child processes for anyone who's curious.
All right, so that's the reading for tonight. And we're going to jump right in because, as I said, we got a lot to cover as usual. So the first thing I would just want to say is that was all from the second edition. You guys have the first edition, and the first three processes that I described in the book tonight are the same as, basically the same as in the first edition. The second edition adds what I'm going to talk about tonight, this additional forgiveness process. And obviously, as soon as the second edition is available, you guys can get a copy of that. You'll see it there. But I wanted to highlight that tonight because it's actually, I think it's, in terms of a practical go-to in the moment kind of forgiveness process, I think this is pretty good. So we're not there yet. Let me just give the general overview on forgiveness. So as I mentioned, just keep in mind that forgiveness is something we do by ourselves, for ourselves. Now remember, forgiveness is good for us. The other person's participation is not required and may in fact be counterproductive. Keep in mind that, as we said in chapter 6, everyone thinks they're right. Thus, the other person may not agree with your assessment that what they've done is wrong. And, again, it's all based on perspective, perception, and we all see the world differently. So what I interpret as being offensive or even harmful, the other person probably doesn't see it that way. The other person, for whatever reason, thinks that they were justified in doing what they did, and all of that. So that's why this is something we do by ourselves, for ourselves. And then, in most cases, they shouldn't even know that we're forgiving them. Again, it's not something we want to announce in most cases, especially if it's clear that the other person doesn't feel the same way we do about what they did. So as I say here, in most cases, the other person should know we're forgiving them, except when they experience our new beneficent attitude towards them. All right, so just keep that in mind. Something we do by ourselves, for ourselves. The other person's involvement is not required and can be counterproductive. So this is the processes I was talking about. So this is adapted. I highlighted this book in our recommended reading a few weeks ago, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. I've actually modified it a bit. If you actually have the book, it'll read a little differently. But I found that both of these are useful in the moment. The first one is something that seems to be effective for me with a long-standing, if I have a relationship with somebody ongoing, and there's some old grievances or resentments, I fully and freely forgive you, name a person. I release you emotionally, mentally, and physically. I completely forgive everything connected with the matter in question. I am free and you are free. From this day on, we can each move forward with our lives unencumbered by the anger, hurts, pain, and resentments of the past. Now, again, I kind of alluded to this in the reading tonight. The first thing that we have to keep in mind is you don't have to get the words perfect. This is not some magic spell or some magic formula, all right? What's much more important is the intention. If the intention is there to fully release and forgive the other person, then however you say it will be effective. So check your intention. And ultimately what we're trying to do is change our mind about ourselves and about the other person. Now, as I said several times, we have to change how we see ourselves in that relationship, in that situation. If I still see myself as in danger, if I still see the other person as harmful, potentially harmful or abusive, we may not want to forgive them because we may be setting ourselves up for more harm in that situation. So you got to do all that stuff first. You got to make sure you know how to take care of yourself. You got to make sure that you're safe. And then if the intention is to be free of those resentments, to be free of those grievances, then we take these processes and we begin to work them in our own mind and in our own heart. Again, with the intention to forgive, to release, to let go of the past, not for anybody else, but for us, because forgiveness is good for us. Freeing ourselves from our past is the only way we can move into our future. The only way to create a new life is to let go of the old life, to let go of the past. Now, again, it may mean that we don't hang out with those people anymore. It may mean that we don't allow them in our lives in the same way and all of that. But what we're letting go of are the resentments, the grievances, the bad feelings, the anger, the stuff that poisons us. Remember, prolonged, extended periods of anger, of resentment can affect our health, can affect certainly our mental health, but also our physical health, amongst other things. So we're doing this for us. We want to be free of our past. Now, I guess potentially if the other person comes to us and apologizes and acknowledges their part in things, then you can include them in some way in this process. I think it's more effective, certainly if the other person, we know the other person's not on board, is just to leave them out of it entirely and do it internally. It's something, we do in ourselves, within ourselves, in our own hearts and minds. And then when we go back to deal with them, to be in relationship with them, we work on our boundaries. We work on healthy ways to take care of ourselves in that relationship going forward. All right. And then the other part of this, so that I found is good if I have a longstanding, ongoing relationship with somebody. And then the second one is very helpful in the moment. So peace be with you. Let there be perfect harmony and understanding between us. I release you in light and love. I give you all the blessings of life which are mine to give. I am free, you are free, and we are one in the heart and mind of God. God, spirit, love, whatever word you want to use there. Now, I found for me, this is like really good when I'm in traffic and somebody cuts me off. Somebody, a stranger, somebody I don't know, instead of feeling resentful, forming a grievance against that person who I probably may never see again, having this in the back of my head, and you could just, it could just be peace be with you. I give you all the blessings of life which are mine to give. I release you in light and love. It could be as simple as that. And what that does is it shifts our focus, it shifts our intention, it shifts our pattern of thinking and feeling. We take our power back. We're no longer a victim because we're wishing them well. We're releasing them in light and love. We're proclaiming them the blessings of life which are ours to give. That is good for us. That helps us. And because it takes me out of victim mode, it takes me out of giving my power away. Somebody cutting me off in traffic used to ruin my whole day. I'm driving to work. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. Somebody cuts me off. Now I'm resentful. I'm angry. I go to my job. I'm angry and resentful. I interact with other people that way, and it just builds. Whereas if in the moment when it happens, I stop that train, that resentment train, that grievance train, and instead I say, peace be with you. Let there be perfect harmony and understanding between us. I release you. I let you go. I free you. And by freeing you, by freeing them, we're freeing ourselves. So this is why it's good for us. We still take care of ourselves. We still do whatever we need to do to be safe. We still set boundaries and all the things that we've been talking about. And then once we've done all of that and we know we're safe, we know we're good, then we can work on letting go of that resentment, letting go of that grievance, letting go of the ill feelings that make us sick and that can ruin our day. All right. So these two are in the second edition in chapter 7. I'll leave it on screen for a moment if you want to jot it down. The second one especially, you can commit it to memory. So, instead of when somebody cuts in front of us on the checkout line at the grocery store, or as I said, somebody cuts us off in traffic or whatever, somebody steals our parking space at the mall, instead of you a-hole, we can say, peace be with you. I release you in light and love. I am free and you are free. There's a lot of power in this, guys. Don't underestimate this. At least try it. And this is about taking our power back, not giving our power away, not ruining our day because of somebody else's bad behavior. All right. And then, as I mentioned, towards the end of the reading, photographic memory. This is actually a process that I came up with. I was really, really upset by something that happened this a couple of years ago, something that happened, and I was very upset. And it wasn't even directed at me. I witnessed somebody being very unkind, in my opinion, in my perception, to another person. And I love both of them. I love both of them. I'm close to both of them, and there was a conflict between them. And, you know, my perception is that one person in particular was very unkind, bullied the other person. It was very upsetting. And so I came home, and I was still shaken up by the whole thing. And it just kind of came to me. I know this person, and I have a photo of them as a young child. And I just got that photo out, and I sat with it, and I tried to remember that person as a young child, remember, you know, my feelings toward that person as a young child, and kind of took the adult part out of the equation. And it was very healing. You know, I had to do it a few times, but it was very healing. And it transformed the way I felt about the situation, the way I felt about that other person. And I made a decision, I made a choice to somehow be helpful to both parties, to both people. So take a photograph if there's somebody in your life, a family member or a friend or something like that, that you have this conflict with or whatever. Try this. Sit with a photo, you know, get into a meditative place and allow those feelings to come through and process that hurt, that upset, and all of that. By the way, this is a photo of me and my brother. I'm not talking about him and everything I just shared, but I love this photo. You can see I was I was probably around 5 or 6, maybe 6. You see, I was a pretty stylish dresser back then. Thanks, Mom. So have these photos. I told you guys a long time ago, I have this photo. I've had this on the desk since the beginning of the workshop. This is me when I was probably about 9 or 10. So get photos of yourself as a young kid. And that's the second part of this, reclaiming your inner child, and form a relationship with the little boy or little girl that's still inside of you. You know, that's kind of our emotional self, the young boy or girl. And, you know, a lot of times there's room for healing there. There was certainly room in my life just to reestablish a relationship, reestablish a connection with that part of me. Obviously, there's not literally a little kid in me, but, you know, there's still that emotional self that lives within us. There's often a rift between the young self, the child self, and the adult self. And I have found for me, it's been helpful to just tune into that little kid, get a sense of where he's at, you know, because a lot of times the emotional upset and angst that I feel is because he feels unsafe. He feels unsafe or unloved. So if I can comfort him, and in the past, my way of comforting myself was, you know, through addictions, through compulsive behavior, through, you know, distracting myself, mood altering, instead of sitting with those feelings and then trying to find a healthy way to soothe myself. By forming a relationship with that little kid, you know, we have a chance to heal that and to reestablish that relationship. So again, both of these are mentioned at the end of, towards the end of chapter 7. There's a lot of information out there. I've talked in the past about John Bradshaw, his inner child work. There's lots of other authors. There's books out there about how to reestablish that relationship with your inner child and heal that part of ourselves. All right. So there's no specific assignment other than to do the processes for tonight. So we're going to take a break, 5-minute break. I'm going to play the song, and when we come back, if you're watching on YouTube after the fact, I can't play the song because of copyright issues. It's "Love My Life" by Robbie Williams, but the lyrics will be on screen so you can sing along at home. And we'll be back in 5 minutes and go from there. All right, so we're back. So the assignment for tonight was just to look over those forgiveness processes, maybe use them. I'd be really curious to see if any of you guys have used any of those processes, or maybe you have your own way of doing forgiveness. What your experiences or what your thoughts in general are around this. Maybe the idea that forgiveness is something we do for ourselves, by ourselves. Anything that you guys want to chime in on this topic tonight? Didi, you want to go?
Yeah, Peter, I just can't tell you how when I heard the forgiveness practices, because I hadn't reviewed them, the depth of the intensity of those words, the words and the potential of those words. And if I could actually not just say the words, but I actually mean them, wow, won't that change my life forever? So thank you for that. I've used the Ho'oponopono or been introduced to it, but I couldn't do it at the time. I just wasn't ready to take my situation through those particular words in the Ho'oponopono prayer. I do have a forgiveness prayer, which I can share with you via email that is extremely powerful, and so it'll be in your back pocket. So I'm glad to have that one as well. What is it I want to say? Thank you for reminding me about the inner child work. I think there's a big key in there for Didi. It's like there's some denial about who's running the show here, and wanting to, make that effort. But I think I've known that there's value there, and to pay some attention and to, make that connection and not be in denial about it. That would be really good. There was so much said tonight that I don't want to miss. So I'm going to have to go back and reflect. But mostly, I think that's going to have to be it for me, because I've forgotten what else I want to say.
Well, that's great. Yeah. So let me just ask you, where are you at in general with this idea of forgiving certain people in your life? You don't have to get specific or anything like that, but are you feeling more, because I know that's been a goal of yours, an ambition of yours.
A total goal. It was not just a goal, like your whole process is a grace gift. It's a gift from grace for Didi at the right time. It's a total divine download. The whole year has been pure divinity for Didi. And I know that eventually I'm going to be safe enough to be willing to even consider going there with that one situation, but I'm not safe enough yet. And so I know that now through through a full year of wanting to forgive and absolutely not being able to even get close. So what I can do, and there's a lot of, change, intermittent life, life is happening. So, but what I notice is that one problem, kind of all the other little problems, those are becoming really easy. Like I have access to forgiveness. And that one thing is an outstanding problem. But I got to start somewhere. So I'll start with me. And if at the end of the day it's all about self-forgiveness, well, I'm ahead of myself a million light years, thanks to you and all of you who are here.
Well, and you know what? So that's great. And maybe I would suggest, maybe if you haven't done this already, and maybe you have, maybe just practice on the little things. I know that there's this one big forgiveness issue in your life, but maybe save that one and just
Right.
work on the smaller ones. Maybe it
Yeah.
is the next time, maybe the next time somebody cuts you off in traffic or whatever. It's working that muscle. So it becomes a reaction or a response, a habitual response, whereas in the past it might have been a negative response.
Yes. Total. And what I noticed for sure, Peter, is as I direct the forgiveness to myself, like the other stuff just doesn't bother me. You know what I'm saying? It's like the healing of myself, the healing of the relationship to myself is making it so that when other people are really, what is the word I want to use? Confused. I'll just say, when they do weird stuff, it's more like water off a duck's back. I'm just not velcroed to the problems like I used to be. So that's huge for me. That's like life-saving. That's like, thank you, like saving my life.
Yeah, that's even better. Good.
Yeah.
Good job.
Woohoo! Thanks, Pat.
Great. Cynthia.
Yes, thank you for tonight. Oh my goodness. I had talked with someone earlier today who had an experience where she was filled with fear, and then on the other side of it was anger. And we talked about it for a bit, and she was more forgiving of herself for this set of circumstances, that it wasn't her fault, and more accepting of the fact that the other person did something that was not acceptable. It's pretty dumb. So that sense of seeing the change just in a few minutes of reaching out to talk to somebody else, she had received, this relaxation, a letting go of the fear, a letting go of the anger, and being able to go on with her day in a much more positive way. I was out at the beginning of this doing what I do with marigolds, and I do it with roses also. I've watched my mother do it with roses over the years, but our roses are blooming at the present time. But the marigolds are blooming, and as soon as the flower has ceased to be a flower, it's turning into a dead piece. I snip it off, and I snip it off, and I snip them off, and as a result, we have these marigolds that are flourishing. They're just flourishing, like those little places where additional energy might be still going to try to get it to flower a little more, a little stronger, or whatever. It's snipped off, so that energy can go
Are
to
you
the flourishing.
Are you in your garden? Are you by the garden now? Can we see them?
I'm not right now. I've walked
Okay.
away from it, but the next time I'll show you. Well, maybe not the next time. I don't think I'll be in town, but the time after, I'll show you the garden, because that is such a powerful image and very close to what we're talking about, that I can snip off those little places that I'm being unforgiving. I don't have to keep letting that energy flow out there unnecessarily. And I don't need to, I can allow myself to flourish. And I love the marigolds. They're so bright and cheerful and flourishing.
Kind of like
thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Cynthia. Beautiful. I love the imagery. Great. Anybody else? Barb, you want to go?
I know, I sat up. No, I'm just going to use them. I guess I didn't recognize that they were there. Write them down, put them in your pocket, and sometime during the, at times, just maybe use one, as you're moving forward, and go to another one. I'm going to try it. It's another exercise.
Yeah, it's another tool that we have in our tool belt, in our toolbox. And you can, like I said, you can make up your own. And there are people who use prayers from the Bible or, whatever. I mean, whatever works for you. The thing that we want to do with this is let the universe know that we want to let go of that grievance. We want to let go of that resentment. We want to let go of the bad feelings because we don't want to give our power away, you know, and this is an expression of love rather than fear. You know, again, it's really helpful if I can look at somebody who's attacking me. Again, once I'm sure that I'm safe, I'm out of harm's way, if I can look at them as somebody who's hurting, who's afraid, who's confused, who feels insecure, who feels unsafe, it changes the whole equation. You know, and we started off this chapter, I said, you know, something that's very helpful is to recognize that we're all doing what we think we need to do to either survive and or to be happy. I mean, everything that we do, we talked about this in chapter 5, decision-making and the desire to feel better. Every choice or decision we make is because we think that if we do or have that thing, we'll feel better. Now, it's usually on the topic of feeling better in terms of, you know, the two core questions. Am I safe? Am I loved? So wanting to feel better on one or both of those is usually at the root of our decision making. So if I can remember that when somebody is doing something to me that in the past I might take personally or feel offended by or feel insulted about, and I can stop and say, wow, well, they're just trying to feel better in this situation, and they must feel really insecure to have to attack me to feel better. They must feel really insecure to have to put me down or insult me or belittle me or whatever so they can feel better. So I can have some understanding and some compassion. So instead of taking it personally, and remember, my opinion, my experience, other people don't have the power to hurt me unless I give them that power. And I'm less inclined to give my power away these days. So as I do that, forgiveness becomes a lot easier. And I'm not fighting myself so much. I'm not trying to overcome that feeling of, well, they insulted me, or, you know, they were mean to me, or they didn't give me the praise or gratitude. You know, they didn't say thank you when I did something nice for them. I don't have to deal with any of that anymore. And to the point where it almost doesn't even enter my head. That's freeing. That's like a recipe for a whole new life. So
Right.
I offer this to you guys in the spirit of that.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that's right. There's not so much forgiveness in the everyday thing right now because we've, you know, grown up, you know, or bigger or better. But yeah, and I'm recognizing that I've got to take the time to forgive the people, like we're saying, it's probably the past people, our parents, or things that have happened throughout our life. I mean, it's over and it's past. And to truly forgive, to truly forgive, and then release it will be a great experience. Yes, it won't be there anymore. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, we said this last week. How do you know when you really have forgiven somebody? You're no longer upset by them.
Right.
You know, now again, if somebody is acting inappropriately and it's somebody that we see on a regular basis, you know, we still have work to do in terms of making sure that we take care of ourselves.
Right.
We don't want to put ourselves in harm's way. We want to have boundaries. You know, whatever we need to do to take care of that. But I noticed this in myself, and I shared this last week. You know, there are things that people do now that in the past would have totally set me off. And now sometimes I don't even notice them. And when I do notice them, I say, oh, I have a choice. I can either be upset about this, or I can just let it go and get on with my day. And what's the more kind thing to do to myself? You know? So it really is about taking my power back. Again, not taking things personally, not investing time and energy in making other people wrong. How could you do this to me? Remember, that's the ego. Whenever we're in that place of, I can't believe you did that to me. How could you treat me that way? How could you say that to me? That's all ego. Again, it's not to say that somebody else is not acting inappropriately, but I don't have to get upset about it. I really don't. You cut me off in traffic, I don't have to curse you out anymore. I don't have to give you the finger. I don't have to chase after you and cut you off. I used to do all that crazy shit. And you know, I put my safety at risk. I mean, it wasn't all the time, but you know, every now and then I just kind of lose it. I don't do that anymore. I don't even drive in the left lane much anymore. I used to drive, I was always in the left lane up somebody's ass because they were driving too slow. Now it's like, what's the rush? Where am I going? Anyway, all right. You want to say anything else, Barb?
No, everything's good.
All right, great. All right, so anybody else? Play the song one more time. 3.5 minutes this time. We'll come back and do our final wrap up for tonight. All right, guys, so that's it for this week. As I said, we're going to finish up chapter 7 next week. And then the following week, we'll do a review, chapters 1, the whole book, 1 through 7, and go from there. All right, and hopefully the second edition will be available within the next couple of weeks. Actually, probably like the middle of August. I'm just setting up the proof for the paperback edition, and the audiobook is done. The audiobook is done. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
The ebook is pretty much done, and so it's just I have to get a proof of the paperback before I finalize everything. Anybody want to say anything?
Woohoo!
Yeah, woohoo!
I got to chime in at you. Woohoo!
All right.
When do we get to hear the audiobook?
The way it's set up, I have to finish the paperback and ebook because that's through Audible, that's tied into the Amazon listing and all of that. So the ebook, the audiobook will be available last, but it should be available pretty quickly after all this other stuff is done. So I'm thinking certainly by the end of August, if not sooner, everything by the end of August, if not, and probably hopefully by the middle of August. The second edition is about 35% new or revised material, 30 extra pages. You know, the first edition is great, and there's much more similarity than difference. But I really feel like the second edition really is what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And honestly, just working with you guys and everything else that's gone on for the last almost 2 years since I published the first edition, you know, it's given me more material to think about, more stuff to put in there. So there will not be a third edition of Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. There will be another book, but that's a few years away. And there may be more than that, more than one more book. But this will be the final. Actually, I changed the cover too. It's similar, but not the same. But this will be the final Be Bigger Than You Think You Are book. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? So remember, be bigger than you think you are today and every day. I will see you guys next week. And I want to hear about your celebrations and victories.
All right,
Bye.
thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, Peter.
Good night.